When my wife returned from her week-long business trip, an overwhelming sense of relief came over me. Watching her step through the front door with her suitcase in hand, smiling despite looking completely exhausted, filled my heart with comfort. She looked like someone who had been on a long, draining journey, worn out but satisfied. I helped her unpack as she talked about endless meetings, late night dinners, and the non-stop cycle of conference rooms, airports, and business events. Everything seemed completely normal. I was simply grateful to have her back home. Later that evening, while sorting through the laundry, something caught my attention. On one of her dresses, there were faint white marks near the neckline that stood out against the fabric. At first, I brushed them off as ordinary stains, maybe from food or a drink she had accidentally spilled while traveling. But the longer I stared at them, the more uncomfortable I became. They didn't resemble wine, coffee, or anything that should have been there. Something about them felt deeply unsettling. My stomach tightened with a strange feeling of dread. I tried convincing myself it was nothing. She had been rushing from one work event to another, eating on the go. Stains happen. I kept telling myself that questioning her loyalty was unfair. Yet even as I folded the rest of the laundry, I couldn't push the thought out of my mind. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of that dress flashed before me. The following morning, while she was in the shower, I found myself checking the dress once again. The marks were still there. They were faint, but impossible to ignore. My heart raced as suspicion settled even deeper inside me. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking. But what if I was right? What if that trip hadn't been only about work? The thought alone made me feel physically sick. I never imagined I would reach a point where I doubted her enough to search for proof, but I did. I took the dress to a laboratory. My hands trembled as I handed it over, and my voice barely stayed steady. It felt like I was betraying her trust. Still, I couldn't live with the uncertainty. If I ignored my doubts, they would slowly consume me from within. The waiting nearly drove me insane. I acted like everything was normal. I smiled when she spoke, asked about her day, and even laughed as she shared stories from her trip. But behind every smile, behind every loving word, there was a voice in my mind whispering, "What if she's lying?" When the results finally arrived, I sat alone in my car holding the envelope as though it weighed 1,000 pounds. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to know the truth. I told myself that opening it would either destroy everything I had or finally set me free. When I finally tore the envelope open, it felt as if the world had stopped spinning. The report didn't mention food, detergent, or any harmless substance. Instead, it confirmed my worst fear. Organic traces. The kind that couldn't be explained away. The kind that didn't belong to me. My breath caught in my throat. The paper felt as though it was burning in my hands. My mind desperately searched for another explanation, but there wasn't one. I sat there in complete silence, feeling everything inside me collapse. That evening, I couldn't even bring myself to look into her eyes. She casually talked about her next business trip and upcoming deadlines, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. Every smile she gave felt like another knife twisting into my heart. I barely spoke during dinner. When she asked if something was wrong, I muttered a vague excuse and walked away. For several days I lived in silence, pretending everything was fine, while the report remained hidden inside my drawer. Every night I took it out and stared at it, unable to move forward, unable to confront her, trapped between heartbreak and anger. Eventually, I couldn't carry the burden any longer. One evening, I quietly asked her, "Did anything happen on your trip that you haven't told me?" Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. For the briefest moment, her eyes grew wide before she forced an uneasy smile. "What do you mean?" she asked. That single reaction told me everything. I pulled the report from my pocket and placed it in front of her. The color instantly disappeared from her face. She couldn't find the words. Her lips trembled, and tears filled her eyes far too late. At first, she denied everything. Then she cried. After that, she blamed me for not trusting her. None of it mattered anymore. The truth lay between us, cold, silent, and impossible to deny. That night, I slept in the guest room. She knocked on the door for hours, begging me to talk, begging for forgiveness, but I couldn't answer. Something inside me had already died. The trust that once held us together had disappeared, and without it, we had become nothing more than strangers living under the same roof, surrounded by lies. Now, as I sit here writing these words, I've come to understand one painful truth. Once trust is shattered, love can never survive in the same way again. The stains on her dress weren't just physical marks. They became a symbol. They represented the end of something innocent, something I truly believed would last forever. No test could erase what I had discovered. No apology could undo what she had done. The evidence didn't simply expose her betrayal. It revealed the death of our marriage. And no matter how desperately I wish I could forget it all, some stains are never meant to wash away.